I have the pleasure and distinct honor of introducing our guest for tonight, our first guest for tonight, someone who's near and dear to me, a mentor to all of us, and certainly to myself and to Andre. Please welcome our Senior VP, Jim Mannion.
Which comment is Andre getting in trouble for? Calling you a top producer, or some of the other things? I'm wondering.
I mean, some of the other things that you put you on the spot for. It's like, God, why did you address that?
Well, actually, just to clarify, Andre mentioned that we don't have a tagline for Thrive. Technically, we haven't communicated the tagline for Thrive.
That's what I figured.
So this is slight nuance of difference. Okay. It's nice doing the show with Andre a number of times. First time with you. Very nice to be here with you. And then you'll be joining us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you for being with us. And boy, I mean, that you're even agreed to be with us after such an amazing, intensive conference. Now,
being awake at this time.
And even awake, that's true, because 8 o'clock is past your bedtime, right? Yeah. But listen, let's talk a little bit about, as we get into some of the things of the conference, you know, having a conference, everyone, like this. I mean, we had over 1,000 people. It takes a year in advance. You're already planning for next year, right? So there's a lot of work that goes into it. I mean, and so talk about kind of how you're able to incorporate putting off a conference like this with all the other responsibilities that you have, you know, helping to run this company.
Well, it's a great question. Basically, we have a fairly small team on the network, and a lot of the Amy is a big contributor to putting on the event, and we have some very talented people who are experts, like Chris DeForest and Mark Polis, who are Jackie Sharp, Sharpie as she's also known, who are people that are adjunct members of the team we bring in. So basically, for a period of time, we kind of go through what needs to be done and figure out how to do it. For us, it's enormous fun. It's a ton of work, but the real payback is when people enjoy it and have a good time, and that's basically what we get from it.
Well, I tell you, right, and all the people that are out there, I know I can speak for my colleagues. It was a well-executed event, a lot of fun. We had a lot of great segments. I'm sure the people that were there, I mean, a lot of fun segments, things that kind of came out of the blue, and it was... and yet the messages were there, and I think that's how people really learn. When they're having fun, and there's a lot of different dynamics in an event like this, because let's face it, people had to go through traveling to get there, you know, and it was we started Friday, went all the way to Sunday afternoon. I mean, you guys were on a dime when it came to execution of the event. Like, when it was over, and we all had a lot of fun, and there was such an energy, not just as to a pun, but it was such an energy in that space this year. Really amazing. Well,
it's hard if you're just sitting somewhere and being yelled at, you know, nonstop. I get that at home, so I can understand. But no, I think if people enjoy themselves, it's a lot more. You're a lot more willing to sit down, and training information becomes more meaningful that way too. So it's mixing the things together. I think hopefully helps.
It certainly does, and I would love the format, and I got a lot of feedback having some of those ancillary breakout sessions prior to our general session. And then, of course, we had a great opening to our night where we went, you know, Greg went right into our new name and everything that was, you know, how that stood as what we were going to be going forward. John did a great job last night explaining that and really making sense. I personally love when we put the I's in the Thrive and how he tied that in. I think it went from announcing the name, we talked about this last night, to everyone was like, and then when he said that, it was like, right?
Yeah, it was the same reaction internally, because we probably looked at a couple of hundred different options, and it was really Paul Ronsky, he's an outside agency, but Paul Ronsky is our internal creative director, and he's the one who kind of came up with the eyes angle, and I've got to say, it really made the difference for a lot of us.
And I've got to say that I am so thrilled and honored to be promoting that name going forward, because we're going to have a lot of fun with it.
Now, since you mentioned it, I do want to say that we use the platform of having conference to share with people the name, because what better time is there to explain why we would take North American Power and call it something else. But we want to also ask that people not try to do too much with it, because over the next couple of months we'll be in this transition mode and really want to be sure that we fully put out the right parameters for how to use it. So this isn't the time, for example, for people to start printing up Thrive shirts or Thrive taco bags or Thrive Kleenex packages and things like that. Let us kind of do the thing that we need to do to make it come alive, and we'll go through this whole transition plan with you in the months ahead. And I think when Greg is on next week, Greg is part of the team that worked on this along with Amy, John, Chris, and myself. So we'll help make that come alive.
That's great. We're going to make Thrive come alive
when
we're ready. So everyone out there, no jive, Thrive, high Thrive.
Oh, I'm not a high Thriver. Yeah.
So everyone out there, make sure you heard this. People on this call and on looking at us, you are building a business with North American Power. North American Power / Thrive, North American Power. Nothing's really changed. We still have our website. We are North American Power. We're very proud to be North American Power. We have a transitionary period. I don't want to see any Thrive business cards or T-shirts or any of that kind of stuff, or even a lot of reference to that, because we're just not ready to throw it out there and start using it until we all will be shown how to use it.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, that's the thinking. Yeah.
And because we don't want to dilute the brand. We don't want to put anything to it that really shouldn't be there. So we need all of you as leaders and as reps with our company to really, really understand that. Don't go crazy with it. Just be proud of it. Do your high Thrive, with each other, but let's hold off, right? That's the underlying
I think that's good advice.
Okay, excellent. So awesome conference. Now, we do know that we already have our conference for next year.
We do. How about that?
So exciting. Tell us about where.
Well,
do you have a place, by the way?
We have a place. We even played. I'm not going to attempt to hum the theme song because you have to be my age group to know it, but we're going to the Big D, going to Dallas next year in September. So we announced that at conference, and
very excited. That's a very easy city to get in and out of, by the way.
It is. It is.
Dallas,
it's a
Dallas, Texas.
Great place to get to, and we expect we'll have a lot of people from Texas that'll be local that'll want to come to that. But also, it's a great place to get to from all over the country. It's a great airport hub.
Yeah, it is. It is. And so the date is September 25th through 27th, correct? So everyone has it, September 25th to 27th. Now, so many times people, we've been all stressing how important it is to get to conference, because you can be hearing what we're talking about now. You could read the FAQs and see the links. But there's nothing like being with 1,000 plus of your colleagues from all over the country and being there live. So I tell everybody, and I'm saying this to all you out there, you know the dates, you know the location. You have a whole year to plan. When you bring new people on board, it's the first order of business after you get them signed up to know that they should make that commitment, especially those that want this business to have this business thrive, that they really need to be at conference. And so I really tell everyone, mark that date in your calendar. Do what you can to we have a year for everybody. Put a little, $50 a month, $20 a week. Put a little kitty aside, to invest in your business so you have the money for the airline ticket, for the hotel. Get your ticket now. By the way, Andre and I already got our tickets, $59. We have that pre-conference.
Well, that's a special for conference attendees. So that was the perk of attending conference. The general tickets will go on sale. But philosophically, the goal, we don't view conference as a profit center. We don't come close to covering costs. But the goal is to keep the ticket price affordable. But as a special thank you for people who came to use them this year, they get a special. So
everyone who was out there, get your special price. And for those that aren't, as soon as possible, when it's open, get your tickets. So with that, what I'm going to do now is we're going to switch gears a little bit, because the purpose of this conference, this Power Hour, is to really talk about the rollout of Texas. And how do we do that? What importance there is around this huge state that we now have access to. And you guys did an amazing job at conference to kind of, we had that Texas rally. For people who weren't there, we were able to invite people from all over to come and join us. And we laid out the plan of what was going to happen, and you guys are going to cover that today. November 5th is our launch date for Energy, so people know that, and it's really pre-building time. So with that, I'd like to introduce our Director of Marketing, Miss Amy Nelson. Please come on up. Thank you for being with us. Have you have a seat next to me?
Every day.
Yeah, people are watching.
People are watching. You have to pretend that we're friends.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do is really have you guys talk a lot about the Texas market. You know, the do's and don'ts, what people need to be aware of, any confusion, because I know you've gotten a lot. We've directed some to you. So we're going to let you guys take it away and educate everybody about this great opportunity for all of us.
Yeah,
Great.
no, for sure. Thanks, Valerie. And we have gotten a lot of questions lately. There's a lot of information that we threw out at conference, and it was a lot to digest. Texas, new products, new brand, free energy, everything. So maybe we can clarify some things on the Texas freelance.
Yeah, I think we had a couple of slides that we put together just for people to help follow some of the details. But really, if you think about Texas, it's just an enormous opportunity for a lot of people. And if you click ahead to the next slide, the Texas market is statistically the largest energy market in the country. Has the highest dollar potential, highest energy use per household. In our service areas that we'll be in, it's 5.6 million potential households, which is an enormous market. It includes major cities that everybody's familiar with, like Dallas, Fort Worth, Houston, Corpus Christi, McAllen, Laredo, Galveston, Plano, Midland, Odessa, and a bunch of other places. So
starting to learn the geography more.
Yeah, it's a big state in many ways. So for us, it's an enormous opportunity, and when it comes to electricity, it uses more electricity than any other state, even California, which is a larger state. So the fact that we're going in is just enormous potential for us. If we click ahead one more, here's another cut at the map, and you don't necessarily need to focus on this unless you really kind of know your local utility service areas, but we've shown with color coding what the different markets are. I'll let you look at the slide. The fact is as Valerie mentioned, we're going live November 5th, but there really isn't a need to wait until November 5th because we're doing something that we've never done before here at the company, something that we think can make an enormous difference in this market launch being our most successful market launch. So click ahead. That something is the Texas pre-launch, and Amy, why don't you describe that a little bit?
Yeah, so what we wanted to do is walk you all through the different perspectives of where you are in the business and how the Texas pre-launch would be relevant. So first we wanted to take you through the 1, 2, 3 easy steps of if you were somebody in Texas, a Texas resident looking to get started in the pre-launch. Somebody shared this with you as a way to get in now before the launch of electricity, and you say, hey, this sounds interesting. This is the process that you would follow. So you would first reserve your spot. You would be visiting the Texas pre-launch page of the person that invited you. So if Jim were living in Texas and I said, hey, Jim, I found something really cool. I want you to check it out. And I sent him to my Texas pre-launch site. So that's www.texasprelaunch.com/my-ID number. And then Jim must be a Texas resident in order to reserve his spot. I'm outside of Texas. I'm a rep. I live anywhere. But Jim lives in Texas, so he can reserve his spot for the pre-launch, for the launch of Texas. He'll receive his own ID number, password, and sharing website, just like you as a representative now get your own NA Power ID number, and you get your password, and you get your NA Power site. Same kind of concept, but you're getting an ID number for the pre-launch, your password, and sharing website. So if you go to the next slide, still part of the first step. Once you finish signing up as a pre-launch person, we're calling them a registrant. You register for the pre-launch. So as a registrant, you'll get your confirmation page that shows your ID number and password. You'll also get an email at the same time, which is great because if you don't take down the information right away, you'll get it in your email. So that's step 1, reserve your spot. So if you go to step 2, it's really simple. There's only 3 steps. The second one is to start sharing with your friends and family. This isn't supposed to be a complicated concept. It's really a concept that's supposed to be able to go viral. So as a pre-launch person, you're not worrying about effective approach. You're not worrying about trying to explain the opportunity or what is American Wind or where do you serve electricity. It's all about just spreading the word. So step 2 is to have the person start sharing with friends and family. So we've given them, as a pre-launch person, their own back office equivalent. We're calling it the pre-launch dashboard. And in their dashboard, they have different sharing tools that they can use. So you're seeing right now an image of the sharing page. And it's similar to your sharing section in the back office. You'll notice there's a lot of similarities in tools that we give reps, but it's an abbreviated version for a pre-launch person because we're not trying to overwhelm them with information. So they're getting a sharing page. They can select their sharing message, their sharing vehicle, whether it's Facebook or Twitter, what icon they want to share, and start spreading the word. They can also do a simple copy and paste of their own pre-launch link and start sharing with their friends and family. So that's step 2. And step 3 is really an extension of step 2, which is continue to spread the word and watch it grow. So what you're seeing is a screen grab of, this was an earlier phase of it, but it's basically the same thing. When a pre-launch person in their dashboard, they see a full report of anybody that they brought in the pre-launch. Now, representatives have access to this too, and we'll talk about this later. But as a pre-launch person, you can track and watch people come into your group. So as this goes viral, that list could get pretty lengthy. So you'll be able to see the names of the people that come in, basic contact information, ID number when they come in, where they are in their organization, whether it's level 1 or level 10. Once again, that stuff doesn't really matter because you're just worrying about spreading the word. That's all that you're trying to do here. So that's all a pre-launch person is supposed to do. So during the course of the pre-launch period, the next 8 to 10 weeks, that list hopefully grows as people see how interesting the opportunity is and start sharing. So that's at a high level how it works for a pre-launch person, and I'll just do the one last slide that gets through this process. And this is the final piece of the pre-launch period, and it's important to note as a part of the whole pre-launch experience that when we then say we're live to be able to offer electricity in Texas, as a pre-launch person, all you need to do is find one Texas electricity customer. This could be you, could be somebody else. Maybe it's your Aunt Susie who lives in a service area because you don't, or your contract isn't up, so your Aunt Susie has a contract that's up and you're ready to enroll it. Becomes your qualifying account, and you have 10 days to do it, so before November 15th. So in that 10-day period of time, you just need one Texas electricity customer. So if you back up and think about it, you really have 8 to 10 weeks plus some to find one customer to qualify your spot, and then you're earning on anybody else that does the same. So you're going to bring in hundreds of people potentially during the pre-launch, and anybody that chooses to qualify their spot just like you did, you have the potential to earn. And then there's details as it relates to what happens to enroller placed and rank advancements and things like that, which we can talk later. But at a basic level, that's what it is. I don't think I breathed the last 3 minutes.
I didn't think you blinked, but you got it all out. Yeah. You can see why we have Amy do this stuff, because she actually understands all this more
no, Jim, tell the truth.
Yeah. Actually, I think you tell the truth, but I think that the things to keep in mind are, we're actually going to talk about different ways for people to participate. This whole part of the conversation has been about someone who's a Texas resident, who's coming in and may or may not be interested in building the business. This is somebody who kind of sees an opportunity, and I can just take this email or I can take this video, share it with people on my Facebook, share it with people via an email, whatever it might be, and potentially get a number of people interested in this, and I can gain share in that if they actually end up becoming an electricity customer. So as we go through the other slides, you'll get a sense of what happens for people. That's one category, or people in other categories will be able to talk about it. So this really is for that Texas resident and what they need to do. As Amy said, what's important is that this is truly about doing the ensuring that we're reaching a broader group of people than we typically would reach. And that was the logic in doing this versus just a traditional continuation of American Wind. Because people don't have to, as good a product as American Wind is, some people don't have the vision to understand it and figure out what it means and how it works. And technically, you don't really have to do that to participate this way. The analogy that I use is that the pre-launch period is like making a reservation for dinner. You're not actually at the restaurant, you're not actually eating, you're not getting a bill. You just said, hey, hold the spot for me, and then it's up to you whether you end up actually going all the way for the dinner or not.
Yeah, and to your point, so there's no obligation or commitment to reserve your spot. You're not saying, I agree to become a customer at this point. You're not saying, I can't wait to be a representative. You're just saying, this may be of interest to me, so let me hold my spot and start telling other people. And as you start seeing more people come in, you might say, this sounds like it's something for me. So I want to qualify my spot. I want to go through all of the steps.
Yeah. And it's also important, we're not actually offering electricity at this moment in Texas. We're licensed. We have a few of our leaders are on it, so we're doing business, but we're not offering to the general public yet. We haven't talked about what our rate's going to be. We haven't put out our terms and conditions and those things, all of which are necessary before we actually go live on November 5th. What we're doing is explain the concept. And you touched on, in one of the slides, this video that you created with some additional people that's really designed in a couple minutes to tell the story about getting in the ground floor. That's an overused expression, getting in the ground. In fact, we kind of make fun of it at a conference when we have people say about getting in the sub-basement below the ground floor, but this really is getting in before the beginning in Texas, because other than the 9 or 10 people who have been piloting electricity for us, we're not doing business in the state yet other than with American Wind, so people have a chance to get in on what can be a pretty exciting thing. And we put together some elements that can make it even more exciting as the launch kicks out.
So is that your hint to say we have a couple of slides?
Well, this would be what Michelle would call a seg, or what you or I would call a segue, but it would be like a seg, yeah.
Well, and just to your point before we go on to those other slides, the idea with that video is just that the video does the talking, that there's no need to say, and I can't wait to tell you about American Wind, or I can't wait to tell you about when we're coming for electricity, or any of these things that we may talk about in other markets, because we're trying to do something different in Texas. So in Texas, the video is supposed to speak for itself, and we don't need to do above and beyond that. In other areas, we might have to be able to have somebody understand the full vision and see the full opportunity. With the video, it's supposed to do the whole thing, so that's why it has that viral nature to it. And the fun part is you're able to just let it go, and hopefully as that word spreads, just like a YouTube video that might get millions of hits, it just catches on and the word starts spreading and you're sharing it in different ways. So that's how the word spreads, and you don't have to worry about effective approach or how to talk to somebody or anything like that. So.
Exactly.
So speaking of the next slide, the next one is the Texas bonus pool. Now this was a hot topic for sure at conference. So the idea of the bonus pool is that everybody has a stake in the success of the market. So what we're going to do as a company, for every Texas electricity customer that comes in between November 5th of this year, so the day we launch electricity in Texas, through November 5th of next year, a full year, we'll put $10 into a bonus pool. We'll then, after that 1-year period, look at the amount of customers that came in that are still active, because certainly if they're not with us, that $10 won't go into the bonus pool. But for the number of Texas electricity customers that are still active, we'll then divide that amongst a group of people that are eligible to qualify. So the next slide outlines how you can qualify and have your share in that bonus pool. And there's 2 ways that you can qualify, and this was some of the confusion that came out of conference. So the first way is you either register for the pre-launch. Now these are people, once again, Texas residents that are holding their spot. You registered for the pre-launch before November 5th, or become a representative before November 5th. And that's not just Texas. You can be a representative anywhere and have your share in the bonus pool. So if you fall into one of those 2 categories, you just have one more step that you have to meet in order to benefit from the bonus pool, and that's to enroll 1 personal qualifying Texas electricity customer from November 5th of this year to November 15th of this year. And that's that first 10 days that we're offering electricity in Texas. So just like in a market now, like Pennsylvania, if you were on American Wind and we opened up your market and you go ahead and say, I don't want to purchase American Wind anymore, I can sign up my electricity account. So I click on my email that I get, or I click on the alert in my back office and enroll a personal qualifying energy account in that area. It's the same kind of thing. You're enrolling a personal qualifying Texas electricity customer, whether that's you or somebody else, to complete your eligibility into the bonus pool. So that means anybody around the country can have a stake in the success of Texas. The more customers that come in, the greater we're able to spread the benefits.
And we're going to talk about this a little bit later too, but again, using your example, so if that person that you reached out to who was a Texas resident signed up to and did the pre-enrollment, as long as they got one customer, whether it was herself or someone else, they'd be eligible to be in the pool. But people like Valerie, for example, who's already a representative, would also be eligible if she had someone in Texas who enrolled with electricity during that 10-day period. So it's kind of intriguing because $10, isn't that exciting. I mean, when I was your age, $10 meant a lot more than it does now. But $10 doesn't mean that much. But $10 times how many customers will we have could be a number that's interesting. And then that money divvied up among the people who take the time and effort to play now is part of what makes this sort of fun.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the idea that you could be anywhere in the country really shows that everybody is involved in the Texas pre-launch. Everybody has the tools to be able to reach out to their Texas contacts and have the ability to benefit from the success of that market. So certainly a great opportunity. So I can't even remember what we have next at this point. Okay, so this is what Jim was talking about before. What we decided to do is break down 3 buckets that you might fall into, so we can talk through how the pre-launch would be relevant for you and how it would best be used. So I don't know if you want to take a stab at the first one and then.
Well, it must be easy for you to delegate it to me, but yeah. So this is the scenario now where you take someone who's a representative in Texas. We have some great leaders in Texas, and we've met a number of our representatives there. So really, for this time period, you can continue to build with American Wind, but really the focus during this time period is this is for business builders. Number one, for business builders, people interested really in the opportunity, and for people in the markets that we won't be able to do for electricity. So let's talk about that for a second before we go any further with this. We used an expression at conference about picking up an SOS, where you're talking to someone, you get a strong opportunity signal. And that strong opportunity signal is somebody who says, hey, I've got a lot of bills I have to pay, or I've got to save up for my daughter's wedding, whatever it might be. And, that's sending you a message that they're interested in opportunity, and those are prime targets for participating in the opportunity side, and having a conversation in that scenario on American Wind would make sense because they can begin earning money now. So that's one piece. Also, Texas is a big state. When we showed the map, there were a lot of areas, though, that you can't get coverage in. There are some cities like Austin and El Paso where it's a monopoly, basically, and you can't participate there. We can't go in there. No other company can go in. But what's really cool is that by doing the American Wind Energy Challenge, someone who's in Austin who can't get electricity from North American Power or Thrive can still get their energy for free. So that person may as well join with American Wind. So that's some of the background in terms of when that would make sense. So during this time period, if you're a representative, you can offer the pre-launch through your pre-launch site, and the address is on the screen. You can probably read that better than I can attempt to read those small letters at this point. And again, just as Amy said with the other, the idea is to have the ability to go viral and use the pre-launch to people in the areas where it makes the most sense, where you don't have to have the American Wind discussion for people who are in the key markets like Houston, Dallas, Fort Worth, etc. It's also very important to keep in mind, and this is one where I do think there's been confusion. If you are a representative, whether you're in Texas or Connecticut or anywhere, you are already part of the program. You're already in. You don't have to participate. You don't have to register for the pre-launch. You're a representative. You're already in. So there's no need to do anything. You have access to all of the information in your back office. And how do they find that back there?
Yes, so this is a great part too. So what we did for pre-launch people, and I wish we had a slide for it, but Jim told me that if I didn't get the slides to Andre in the next 10 minutes, I might get in trouble. So I just had to give up. So if you need the visuals, you can reach out to Jim directly. I'll give you his cell phone number at the end of the session.
It's a 900 number, but feel free. It's a profit center for me.
So if you're a pre-launch person, you have your own dashboard, like I said before, your abbreviated back office that has basic content that'll give you enough information to be able to start spreading the word. As a representative, we didn't want to have you jumping back and forth between a pre-launch dashboard in your back office and you're trying to manage who's in what place, how do they fit here, I don't see this name here, but I thought I saw it here, and let me go back and log in, log out. So what we did is we created a Texas pre-launch page in your back office, and if you've been able to click around your back office since conference, if you go under My Business, there's Texas pre-launch, and if you click on that tab, you actually have almost all of the information that pre-launch people have. And we boiled it down to the necessities for you because as an experienced person or somebody who's pursuing the opportunity, you have all of the other tools in other places. So what you have is a running report of your pre-launch people, the same exact report that pre-launch people see. You have a summary of how many people have come in, both personally and on your team. You also have FAQs that you can access. You have the policies and procedures you can access. And you actually have a link that will go directly to your report section. Now, if you notice, if you've had any pre-launch people come in on your team as a representative, if you go into the org report and you pull your full org report, you'll actually see some orange highlights. And the orange highlights are personal pre-launch people that have come in under you. And any highlights under that, I think they're gray. They're referrals that came in through that pre-launch person. So at a glance, you're actually able to see pre-launch people from representatives. And then even further, if you scroll over into one of the columns, under distributor type, internal speak, you'll see pre-launch next to that person. So you have two ways to distinguish it as a pre-launch person. But at a glance, the highlighted color should be able to help you. So all of that information, you have all you need in that one page under My Business, as well as at a high level in the org report, so you get a sense of where they fall big picture. So you don't need the pre-launch dashboard that we're giving to pre-launch people.
And it's important that those are like apples and oranges, because you want to be able to keep track separately of real customers who are electricity, gas, or American Wind over here, and then these pre-launch registrants over here, because they're technically not real customers. They don't have a rep ID. They can't enroll someone because they're not a representative. So you want to keep them separate, but the idea was to have it all in one place in your back office so that you don't have to kind of figure out where you are with things.
Yes. So where did we leave off? We were talking about if you're a current representative and you're in Texas.
Yeah, I think we went through a couple of the tips. I don't know if there were any others.
Yeah, I think there's one other thing that came up, and I think it has to do with the distinction between American Wind and pre-launch, in that if you're talking to somebody and you know they're a business builder, you're talking to them about American Wind, that's great, and that person can have pre-launch as a tool, but you don't want to be talking to somebody about pre-launch or share the pre-launch video and then try to tell them about American Wind or tell them there's a way they can earn money now if they do American Wind, because you're just going to confuse them. The pre-launch is the idea that you want to be able to let that go viral. They may discover who North American Power is and that they have this, not that we're trying to hide it, but details on who we are, and they want to start with American Wind, and that's great, and they'll connect back with a representative and start an American Wind position to earn income now. But it's important to keep the two separate, because as soon as you start talking American Wind to pre-launch people, you're going to create confusion, and that viral growth is not going to happen because it's going to stop at wondering what's American Wind, what's the conversation, all of that piece. Just like if you went down the American Wind path and started sharing with American Wind people the pre-launch concept, they're able to have it as a tool and can offer both, but a pre-launch person can only offer pre-launch. So you should really know the audience that you're talking to, and don't try to cross the conversation from American Wind into the pre-launch. You may not find the results you're looking for.
Yeah, it's a great point. One other thing that I would mention is what we have done here with the whole pre-launch concept isn't something we came up with on our own. It was really in partnership. We've worked with about 10 top Texas leaders going back to, I think, our first meeting was November or December of last year. So for a long period of time, in addition to all the other operational planning that's been done, it's really saying what specifically makes the most sense in this market. Because when we say Texas is different, it is really different in many ways. People are very familiar with deregulation. They're very familiar with how things work there. In Texas, there are energy companies that have stadiums and billboards and TV advertising. So it's a very different animal than we're used to. So this whole thought process of what would have the most appeal specifically in this state is what led us down this path. And this isn't necessarily the answer for every other market that we're in, but it's what we believe makes the most sense here.
Yeah, and the idea that your pre-launch position is qualified by a Texas electricity account. I know we've had the question several times, can I just have the person enroll an American Wind account to qualify? I think if the company were going into Texas trying to make American Wind the biggest product beyond electricity, that maybe that would have been the action step. But since the company is going into Texas for electricity, the idea is that a Texas electricity customer is where we wanted to get to. So that qualifying that position with a Texas electricity account is really the best case scenario for you and the company as a win-win instead of enrolling an American Wind account. So that's why we have it in there that it's Texas electricity versus just being able to enroll American Wind. Okay. So if you're currently a representative and you're not in Texas, we can go back just a slide. We may have covered a lot of it, but just to be clear. So we first covered if you're a representative in Texas. If you're a representative not in Texas, continue to build your business as you normally would in the markets that you have contacts, whether that's Connecticut, PA, Maryland, wherever it might be, electricity, gas, and American Wind. If you have Texas contacts who are business builders, like Jim was talking before, and or don't live in service areas that will be able to offer electricity, offer them American Wind. That's a way that they can get started now on their subscription to American Wind, and they don't, and they get it, and they can share with others and build their business using American Wind. All other Texas contacts, like we've been saying time and time again, is offer them the pre-launch and have them reserve their spot through your pre-launch website. So all representatives have a pre-launch website, www.texasprelaunch.com/your rep ID number. So use that website to get to those contacts in Texas so you don't have to worry about explaining the American Wind opportunity or talking about the product, that it's just meant to go viral. We put in here again that as a representative, you're part of the pre-launch, so whether you're in Texas or out of Texas, you have an opportunity to make the most of the launch. So it's just a slight difference if you're not in Texas, but it's still making that judgment call if you're talking to somebody about the business using American Wind and leading with that, or if you just have contacts and you can spread the word using the pre-launch.
And this, I think, is where a lot of people who watch the Power Hour, people who have a networking background, we have everybody, different kinds of backgrounds that we watch, but if you have a networking background, you're talking to somebody who you specifically know is a networker and is into the channel, that's a different conversation than you're going through a sorority friend from school or someone else. And that's the difference between leading with American Wind and the business opportunity, or in this case, leading with the viral video.
So we had one more bucket that you might be falling into.
Always better than kicking the bucket.
Always better than kicking the bucket. And we may have some on the Power Hour tonight. But if you currently are a pre-launch registrant, so you've reserved your spot in Texas, you're sharing and offering the pre-launch as much as you can using your pre-launch website, that www.texasprelaunch.com/your ID number. Because as a pre-launch person, you don't know, in theory, you shouldn't know too much about American Wind, and you don't want to have to worry about American Wind. Actually, as a pre-launch person, you can't offer American Wind. That tool doesn't exist. You're supposed to be sharing the viral video and building a team that way. So that's what happens if you're a pre-launch person. All you're doing is talking pre-launch and sharing the video. So I think that's all we have in terms of PowerPoints. Oh, no, we have additional support. So we do have meetings. I know Andre was talking about it earlier. On the calendar hosted by Texas Leadership, specifically this week and next week in the time after conference. We'll be in South Texas this week, I believe Corpus Christi tonight, Houston, and then McAllen. And then next week we'll be in Dallas and then Fort Worth. So we're going to be really spreading the word about what happened at conference as well as details on the pre-launch and how you can get started. So you have contacts in Texas. If you get into these meetings, they'll be able to get any message about conference wherever they go, the same message, which is great. And then we also have a resource through representative support announce specific to pre-launch questions, announce Texas pre-launch at napower.com. You can send any questions you have there, and we'll get them addressed for you. I know we do have a lot, and you can also stay tuned for more information in the coming weeks, coming from both the home office and then field leadership as the word starts spreading. So we understand there's a lot of information out there, so we'll really work hard to make sure it's all clear and understandable as we head out of these first couple of weeks.
Yeah, I think part of what we might want to do is to also paint the picture of what would happen. So, if you think of someone who uses the sharing tools, you could potentially have a couple dozen people who have expressed some interest. They haven't committed, but have expressed some interest in joining us in one way or another, even before November 5th date. So that's kind of an exciting concept with this that we think is really one of the key drivers in this. And the ability to get that and to get that start is something that's really been a factor in our doing this. I think CC had an interesting question up there that's worth talking to.
If a new person enrolls as a business builder with American Win, then they enroll under the pre-launch site. So is the full question, if they enroll, if they're a business builder on American Win, and then they want to enroll under their pre-launch site?
The way I'm reading it, if a new person enrolls because they're interested in the business and they do with American Win, they're a representative.
Mm-hmm.
They don't need a pre-launch site. They're a representative. They have their back office. They can use the viral tools to share broadly, and they can also attract people with American Wind as they would before. The key is that they now have the potential of the pre-launch to cast a broader net and meet more people.
Yeah, and I think that's a good way to think of it, that look at the pre-launch as a tool in your toolbox to be able to reach beyond people you might otherwise not be able to connect with through the American Wind opportunity. So you have American Wind as a tool and you have pre-launch as a tool, and you get to choose based off of who you're talking to and how you know them, what opportunity to share. So if you think of it that way, you really, I think it puts into perspective where you might go and how you might use it best. So how will registrants be reminded about enrolling as the launch date approaches? And that's a really good question. So as we get closer to launch, November 5th, certainly you're going to want to start thinking who's your qualifying account, whether that's you or somebody else. And the company will begin to send notifications to you so that you know when that time comes and how you can do it, links to click, steps to follow. And that's things that we'll be doing. But also, as somebody spreading the word and having a stake in the success of the market, you want to certainly be reaching out to the contacts that you've brought in and on your team to make sure that they're aware as well. So we'll be getting it from both sides, whether it's you or the company, but we'll certainly be taking care of some of that on our end.
There's another question from Mike asking, will we use the same pre-launch in other states? To be determined. I think clearly this makes a ton of sense in the state of Texas, but as we enter other states, I think we'll go through a similar process. I think one of the big things was this partnering with leaders and making sure that we factored in local dynamics, and because while in some ways it's one country, there are actually many differences market by market. So this, we believe, is the right way to do Texas. It may or may not be the way we do other markets, so we'll make that determination as we get closer in. A question from Steve, how will we know if someone is not in the footprint area, meaning a place like Austin or El Paso?
Yeah, certainly. So we had those maps up before, and I think we'll try to have this recorded, assuming we don't have this crash, right, Andre? And we'll be showing that service map a lot. You may be able to see at a glance, if you know the map well, where your area is. There's also distribution areas listed, and we'll be in 5 distribution areas. In Texas, they're not really called utilities. This is a company that just delivers the electricity to you. And if you go on their sites, they have resources as well to be able to enter in zip codes and find out areas that they'll be serving. We'll also be releasing similar tools as we get closer to launch to help provide more clarity. But if you want to find something now, that information is certainly available.
Yeah. Fred had an interesting question. Does this lock them in under our rep code? And if you think of locking someone in as with handcuffs, This is more like Scotch taping, okay? Because it is possible that Amy could pre-register several times. You know, I might have asked her and she did it, and then her fiance decided to do it, and she two-timed me with her fiance, and ultimately Amy's going to decide which of us to go with. If she becomes a customer under, you know, with me, which is probably the smart move to make, then, you know, then she would be handcuffed with me, and that would count. I probably should stop this analogy because having met your fiance, but anyway, you get the picture though. So really, you're attached and there's a connection there, but it's up to the person to decide if they actually want to go ahead and be a customer, and that's what determines it.
Yeah, and as we get closer to launch, we'll be talking more about it, but during that 10-day period, that's really when we're able to see who's real and who's not, who enrolls qualifying accounts and who doesn't. What's actually going to happen after that 10-day window, for those accounts that aren't qualified, so those pre-launch positions where you either decide you're not interested, you can't find a customer to qualify your position, what we'll do after that 10 days is go through a process of actually removing those accounts that we don't have a qualified customer behind. So that at the end of that 10-day window, you'll get a true picture as a representative as to who qualified their position and who's now a real representative with you. And that's when you have the opportunity for enroller place and all of those things is after that 10-day window. So really, until that 10-day window is up, we don't know who's actually with us and where that qualifying customer falls. So that's an important period of time.
We have time for one quick question, maybe. Jerry asked if I have someone in Texas that's registered for the pre-launch but may not be in an area where we can sell electricity, what are their options to share in the Texas pool? Well, it's the same as anyone else. All they need is one electricity customer in Texas in the areas that we do service. So if they live in Austin, where we can't be, all they need is one customer from Houston or Dallas or Fort Worth or Corpus or somewhere else, and they're in the pool. Mm-hmm. Also, one quick comment. Doug, I want to compliment for his comment here. Jim is so funny, and Amy explains everything so clearly, which is appropriate because Amy's the smart one, and I'm here for comic relief. But thank you, Doug, for pointing that out.
I'm going to stand right between these guys.
Okay, great.
Wow, what a great, great night we've had, and thank you for all the information that you shared with us. To both of you, I know you're looking back this, so you don't need to. I just wanted to be here, so I'm in the camera, of course. But anyway, thank you so much for being with us. Guys, there's so much more information that is going to be available. There's more information that will be placed in our back office on the Texas Pre-Launch site. All the information we're going to need as reps and as Texas Pre-Launch registrants will be given to us in plenty of time. It is very clear, because I've got this and you addressed it too, we don't, as you're pre-registering people, they're registrants. They're not reps. You do not need to place them. It's not like a 60-day where you have to hurry up and place them in your organization. So guys, know that that is the case. All that will be communicated. Please make sure, everyone, that you tune in tomorrow. We have Joel Bernstein on our show, our Director of Product Development, that will be speaking about our new home automation system. And that is very exciting, and you'll get all your questions answered there, as well as the free energy challenge for American Wind participants. So thank you, Jim. Thank you, Amy, for being with us. Everyone out there, as you move forward, sharing the opportunity, whether it's in Texas or around this country, you're being the power for change. And for that, we really appreciate you, and we love you very much. So until tomorrow night, thank you, everyone, for being with us. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Amy. And thank you, NAP Thrive.